guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we're going to be getting into my 2024 reading survey. Basically, I'm going to be wrapping up a few superlatives across all of my reading throughout this year. I took a bunch of these type of tag videos a couple years ago in 2022 and compiled all the questions that I liked into this 22 question conglomeration. I will link down below my past years of this video in case you're curious. I was watching them back to get the questions and I was really entertained with myself, if I do say so myself. Like, I thought it was really entertaining footage. So if you want to watch those, I will link them. Also, if you have missed out on any of Happy Haley Days, link in the playlist. We're posting every day leading up till Christmas. I've been loving it. I hope you've been loving it too. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my reading survey. The first question is, how many books have you read in 2024? 177 up to this point. If I had to give an estimate as to how many I'll read by the end of the year, I would probably say 185. I'm gonna be bold and say I'm gonna probably read 8 more books before the end of the year because I'm going on a trip to an isolated cabin. As I always read about, I'm finally getting my dream. I'm gonna read so much, constantly. Instead of going for Christmas with my family, I'm going to a cabin to read. Like, this is the decision that I've made for my mental health and I'm so excited for it. So catch me reading 185 by the end of the year, hopefully, but as of now, it's 177. And my reading goal every year, I set it to 100 because I just kind of want to beat it every year. And also, that's a lot of books. That's like more than 2 books a week if you read 100 books, so I think it's a big accomplishment either way. The next question is, what was your most read genre of the year? And I really like this question. It always surprises me. This year, my top genre was thrillers. I read 87 thrillers this year, followed up closely, but not too closely, by horror. I read 53 horror books this year. I don't know why this keeps like flip-flopping back and forth. In 2022, it was thrillers by a landslide, but then last year it was horror by a landslide. Apparently I'm back in my thriller era. Maybe it'll even out. I don't know. Next up, we have the longest book that you read this year. Coming in at 984 pages, we have Kingdom of Ash. This was a big bitch, okay? This was an undertaking. I read Throne of Glass this year. It was actually the first thing that I read in 2024. If you missed my reading vlog, it's like an hour long. It is emotional. It is wild. I will link it up above and down below. We're just gonna link all the things today.
I'm sorry, editing Haley. Have fun with that.
But yeah, this is by far the longest book that I read, and it was wild, but honestly, it was worth it. Obviously, the next question is, what is the shortest book that you've read this year? And this was actually a recent read for me, The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. This is a little novella about a girl who goes home with her friend for Christmas on their little break from college, and she starts to have a little romance with her friend's brother, but he's also a suspected killer. It's part very like vibey, Christmassy, cozy romance, but also like dark, mysterious, and honestly really shocking. There was a crazy twist in here that really got me. It's only 96 pages. It was such a quick read, one sitting for me, and I loved it. The next question is, what is your best book of the year? I have quite a few that I really, really loved this year, but if I had to pick one, and for this tag I do, it's gonna be So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This book, I could literally sit here and talk about for ages. I'm gonna save that for my best books of the year video, so you're not hearing it over and over and over. But if you haven't heard me talk about this somehow, the pitch is 2 very different but very closely connected best friends go on an isolated snowy getaway to a cabin for one of their birthdays. They both end up talking about the failures of their relationships with men, and attending a vampire orgy. And things go off the rails from there. It is a metaphor, okay? It's meaningful, but also it's vampire horror and it's sexy as hell. So it has everything that I could ever want. I love it. And trust you will be hearing more about this. The next question is, what was the best debut of the year? So the best debut released in 2024 to me was My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. This is about a queer relationship that involves ghosts and trauma bonding and how attachment plays into different things through the lens of possession. Oh my god, so good. The intersection of queer possession horror and mental health trauma content is where I want to be at all times. It was beautifully written. I was highlighting so many things in this book. I cannot wait to read more from Joanna Van Veen. Next up, what was the best backlist book that you read in 2024? For me, that was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I heard some not great reviews for this when it first released a few years ago, so I put off reading it, but I am so glad that I finally got to it. It was incredible. We are following a tennis star in this book who kind of like was in her prime years ago, but now a new like young gun is on the scene and she's better. So Carrie, having basically nothing else to her life or self-worth other than her success in tennis, comes back on the scene way later in life, like in her mid-30s, way later than a tennis pro should be playing. And she's like, I'm gonna win a title again. And we follow her journey as she tries to do that. It's extremely character-driven, as most Taylor Jenkins Reid books are, and I was absolutely enamored with it. I laughed, I cried, I reveled in the morally gray imperfection and realness that is Taylor Jenkins Reid's very flawed female characters. I love them so much. I eat it up every time. What can I say? Next up, we have a book that lived up to the hype. For me, that was Fourth Wing. I was not sure going into Fourth Wing if I would like it or not. Obviously, it was so hyped up last year. I just had no idea what to expect, but I loved it so much, and it was such a pleasant surprise to really lose myself in a fantasy world with characters that I really loved. Oh my god, Xaden, whoa, y'all remember when I was in my Xaden era? Ugh.
And now I got a man with dark long hair and blue eyes. Oh my god, I have my very own Xaden.
So I'm just living the fantasy. I'm not gonna tell y'all the synopsis of Fourth Wing. It's a dragon school, okay? And it's worth the hype, so just trust me. Next up, a book that did not live up to the hype. For me, that is God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This book was making all the rounds, okay? So many people were like, this thriller, blah, blah, blah. Reading it everywhere, recommending it everywhere. It was so boring and confusing. Why were there 1,000,000 perspectives that we did not need? I was so bored with so many of them. They gave us information we did not need and I did not care about. And it was all for an unraveling of a mystery that wasn't shocking and I didn't feel like was worth the length of the book. It was just all over the place. I did not enjoy it. And I'm so sorry that this is going to be controversial and probably upset all of the people that read it in their book club, because I made a shady comment in one video that I talked about God of the Woods saying this is just the white lady book club book, and you can hear that back and get offended again. Like, I literally don't care. This is what it is. Like, it's giving the book that everyone's gonna pick up in an airport. It's giving the book that Barnes & Noble is gonna have as their fucking book club pick. You know what I mean? Like, it's that. And that might be fine for some of y'all. Revel in it. I'm happy for you. It was giving me nothing. It didn't live up to the hype. And if you trust my recommendations, trust that. The next question is, what book felt like the biggest accomplishment when you finished it this year? And for me, I would definitely say the entirety of Throne of Glass. That was such a massive undertaking for me, guys. I haven't read a fantasy series physically with my eyeballs since I was in probably 5th grade. And it was just huge books. I read them back to back. I did the fucking tandem read. I fought my way tooth and nail through Tower of Dawn. And I felt like such a G when I finished the Throne of Glass series. This one, my longest book of the year that I talked about earlier, Kingdom of Ash, this one I guess was really like the biggest feeling of accomplishment. But honestly, Tower of Dawn was so hard to get through. It might be that one. The next question is, who was your favorite character of the year? And mine comes from another one of my favorite books of 2024, the main character of Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. Her name is Daphne Bell.
Pardon the angle change, my camera died, but we're back.
Let me tell you a little bit of something about my girl, Miss Daphne Bell. Everyone hates her. All of the bad reviews for this book are like, fuck Daphne, I hate her, she's the worst ever. Even like my best friend read this book and she was like, I hate that girl. She's me. I'm sorry, I get her viscerally. She's very imperfect and she's very upfront about it. She's very type A, she's very controlling, and she's like, you know what? That's just who I am. She's also a chaotic mess. And I love the representation of, you can be eldest daughter type A, controlling, hyper independent core, and also be a burning pile of garbage. Like, sometimes my life is a total mess and everyone always thinks I have it together and I literally don't, and that is how Daphne made me feel seen. I love her. Obviously, we follow her in a crazy situation her whole life. Every time she starts a new relationship, she gets a little slip of paper with the next person she's gonna date and the length of time that relationship is going to last. So she lives her life with basically zero unknowns with regards to dating, until one day she gets a name but no length of time. And she has to tap into her own sense of agency and wonder, is this relationship actually right for her? How does she feel about it? How does she know? It's amazing to me. I loved seeing her journey throughout the course of this book, and I sobbed on a plane while reading it. Next up, obviously, I have to tell you about my least favorite character I read from this year, and that was a very easy choice for me. Comes from my worst book of the year, which is We Came to Welcome You by Vincent Torrado. Soul from this book was absolutely fucking insufferable. Oh my god. In this book, we follow a queer couple who moves into a neighborhood where the people are just insufferable. Like, they're getting microaggression down every time they turn a corner. It's culty, it's weird, something creepy is going on, and we're trying to figure out what that is. Staying on our main character's side was so unbelievably difficult because she was a menace. She treated her wife like shit. She was so self-obsessed. No one who tried to help her could get a word in edgewise. No one could win. She hated all of her therapists. She hated every resource that was around her. She was drinking herself into a stupor. Like, it was literally like she was the most self-destructive character, and we were supposed to believe that the outside factors around her were the things that were the horror and were tormenting her. But all I could sit there and think was, you are the most self-destructive person I've literally ever witnessed. Can we try to connect with one singular human for one singular second? Because I feel like maybe that would help you just a little bit. Also, the mental health rep in here was just so frustrating as a therapist. It was so difficult to hear the way that Soul preached about therapy not being helpful and the pitfalls of therapy. I'm gonna be totally real. There are bad therapists out there, but ultimately therapy is what you make it. I know because I have had bad therapists. Like, I was there understanding in my brain that has gone to therapy school and gotten my master's in mental health counseling. I was sitting there knowing they're not doing their job well right now, but I still got something out of it because of what I brought to the table. Granted, I know not everyone has that level of knowledge or privilege. However, a lot of the time, it's not just they're a bad therapist and it didn't work out. You can still do decent work with a bad therapist because the other half of the relationship is still a valid component. And I feel like that was Soul's pitfall. Like, she could not take personal responsibility for anything. She could not see her 50% in anything. It was horrible. If you've ever spent time around someone who is a complete narcissist and could never take accountability for their actions, that's like reading this book.
Insufferable. I literally never want to think about it. I never want to think about it as long as I live.
Next up, we have the most shocking book of 2024. And I love this question because you can interpret it anyway, and I am using it as a space to talk about another one of my favorite books of the year. My most shocking book this year was Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. Now, this is a great horror novella, but the reason why it was so shocking was because the ending came out of nowhere. The entire time you feel this tension and suspense building, and you know it's going to be this crazy thing that goes off, but the way that it did still shocked me. That I felt was so incredibly effective, that we knew something was coming the entire book, and when it hit, it was still shocking. Like, yes, girl, go off. In this book, we're following a girl who just got out of a relationship with a man. She's never dated women, she's only dated men, but she meets a girl at the farmer's market and she starts feeling those little gay feelings that she's never felt before, and she decides to pursue it. But over the course of their relationship, it's building in the sweetest, most idyllic way. The atmosphere in this book is prime, perfect for springtime, but we have this eerie feeling about her new partner, and by the end we know exactly what it is, and it is so shocking and wild and insane, and the body horror is amazing, and I just love this book so much. If you want to be shocked and appalled but also feel like I am living my queer cottagecore love story, you get both in here. If that's not shocking, I don't know what is. Next question is, what was your favorite couple of the year? Who is your OTP of 2024? For me, it's not a pairing, technically. It's a quadrant. No, there's 5 of them. It's a quintuplet. It's a polyamorous. It's a polycule. My favorite polycule of the year is the 5 people that are in a weird relationship in the Witsec series by Ashley and Rostek. I love this. This is my favorite romance of the year. Not this one in particular, but there's 4 small books that make up the series, and it's incredible. We are following a dark romance plot. A girl is on the run from a serial killer who murdered her entire family and is now obsessed with hunting her down. She is like this trained assassin, basically. She doesn't kill people, but she's ready to kill this man whenever he comes for her. But the nice thing is that sometimes she doesn't even have to draw on her skills and protect herself, even though she's totally capable. She doesn't have to, because her 4 neighbors next door, the 4 hot brothers who live next door, are totally ready to protect her, and she develops a relationship with all 4 of them. It's perfect to me. The thriller plot is exciting and amazing, but also the smut. Don't even get me started. I'm obsessed. The next question is, what is the best written book that you read this year? And for me, that's going to be Come Closer by Sarah Gran. The writing style of this book was absolutely incredible. It's about a woman slowly becoming possessed over the course of the book. She's just living her life and noticing every day that she might be possessed. And when we find out what's possessing her, oh my god, it hits. We are all being possessed by society. It's almost like we live in a society and the patriarchy and misogyny, and it's all real and it's all around us all the time, and it's possessing us like a demon. But the way that it was written about in Come Closer, it was subtle, but it smacked you across the face. And the writing style was just eerie and creepy. I remember reading this book on my Kindle in the dark in my apartment, and I was like running from room to room with my little Kindle lighting the way, because I was like, I'm low-key scared right now. And I wasn't even scared of like a demon. I was literally scared of the reality around me. It was such effective feminist horror. I'm obsessed with it. It felt nostalgic in a way, but also like something I haven't experienced in its entirety yet, because I'm not like a mother. Oh my god, it was a lot, but it was incredible. Next up, we have the book that I pushed the most people to read this year, like my recommendation of the year, basically. So when I have answered this question in the past, I answer with the book that I've gotten the most DMs about, and by far, it's this book, Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. This is one of my favorite thrillers of the year, hands down, easy, and so many of y'all have said that you read this book because of my recommendation and that you enjoyed it, and I am so glad. It is phenomenal, truly. So shocking, so twisty, so fast paced, but also a real intention with mental health rep in this book and with the character development, which kind of drives the story. And y'all know I love that. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about 3 girls who are all in foster care together with this overbearing and really mentally unwell foster mother. But on the outside, they seem to have this idyllic life. So this abuse was allowed to just continue all throughout their growing up. We flash from scenes from the past interspersed with scenes from the present where these 3 women are grown up and brought together in present day by a body found on the property where they grew up. We're trying to figure out who this body is, where it came from, who killed them, what actually went on in their childhood. It's disturbing, it is shocking, it is twisty and fast, but also deeply meaningful and emotional. It's a perfect thriller in my eyes. Next up, we have my favorite cover of the year, and that is Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. If I wrote a book, I would want it to look like this. I saw this book and I didn't even need to read a synopsis. I immediately was like, I'm ordering it. And if that doesn't say favorite cover, I don't know what does. I love the like serial killer lettering. I love the googly eyes and the blood on the tile floor. It really captures exactly what you're gonna get into when you read this book. And it's also just like very visually appealing for a horror girly. And I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of my favorite of the year. You're gonna hear about it much more in my best books of the year video. Next up, we have the favorite book to movie or show adaptation of the year. Honestly, I watched a few adaptations this year and I didn't really love many of them. Out of them all, I think I probably, I hate to say this, but I did enjoy It Ends With Us the most. I really like that book. Do I think it's a romance rom-com and should be treated or marketed that way? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a really empowering and accurate depiction of getting yourself out of an abusive situation? Yeah. And I thought Justin Baldoni did an amazing job with the production of the film. I think Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover not only need a severe case of media training, but they also need to speak to victims of domestic violence and understand the film that they're a part of, which is pretty appalling to me because I know that from reading the author's note in It Ends With Us, Colleen Hoover wrote this based on her mother's experience. So it's a little disturbing to me the way that she has such dissonance with that and continues to market this book in a really inappropriate way. But just from a media standpoint, I think it's great. Next up, we have the book that made me cry the most this year, and that is a tie, honestly, between Expiration Dates and this book. I already used Expiration Dates as my answer for another question, so I'm going to say This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised how much romance is in this video, but I really love this book. I actually read it back to back with Expiration Dates, so I was on like a crazy emotional hangover when I was on this trip that I read both of these books, but I thought this one was so incredible. It is a deeply emotional romance about a woman post-divorce trying to find her way back to herself. It's really more about our main character connecting with herself and having an internal love story, and the way that she's allowed to do that then opens the door for this new love, and she's really scared of it, but she's really hopeful, and because of the intention that she's put into herself, she's able to grow this beautiful connection with a man who is so much different than her original partner, and we just see this beautiful trajectory, and then the last half is like this beautiful love story, and I was just sobbing all over the place reading this book. It was phenomenal. If you like emotional romances, you need to read this. It is phenomenal. There's also like low-key thriller vibes at the beginning of this book. There's like a very intense, high-stakes situation, and it felt fast-paced and it felt good reading it. It was so good. Next up, we have the book that made you laugh the most this year, and for me, that is How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. This was a easy 5-star thriller for me. It is so darkly comedic. I found myself laughing at this main character so much. She's such a quirky, ridiculous woman. We're following this woman who works at a library. Okay, she looks like a boring ass librarian. She's very unassuming. and yet she's secretly a killer. Now, she's not that great at hiding what she's done because a girl at the library immediately catches on and is like, that woman is a murderer. So we're following both of their perspectives. The one woman who's a murderer and kind of sloppy and trying to get away with it, and the other one who is trying to expose her, and going back and forth is like, it's almost like Tom and Jerry-esque. It is so masterfully done. The way that these characters are so weird and flawed is hilarious and also like dark and interesting. I just was so entertained by this thriller. It was such a quick read because I could not get enough of these characters and I was laughing my ass off. Just a couple more questions for this reading survey. We have, who are your new favorite authors that you discovered in 2024? I would say number one, the first probably quarter of the year was pretty much defined by Melissa Broder. I did that taste test video and I really, really loved what I read, but I also really didn't like some of the things that I read, and so I went down this rabbit hole and I have this whole like internal thing with her, even though I literally don't even know her. I guess it's more of an internal thing with her work. But Death Valley was one of my favorite books of this year and I loved it. Also, Nat Cassidy. I read Mary at the very, very tail end of 2023, so then 2024 I was super excited to get more into Nat Cassidy. Also got more into Craig DeLuey this year, as well as Christina Henry, and of course my thriller queen of this year, Noelle West Ely. I read her entire backlist. I have a whole video detailing her entire backlist, rating them all, ranking them all, giving you my full reviews. If you missed that video, I will link it up above and down below because I truly, truly have loved everything that she's written. And the last question of this 2024 reading survey is, what was your favorite nonfiction of the year? And for me, that was Cultish by Amanda Montell. Not a surprise, last year my favorite nonfiction was Word Slut by Amanda Montell, and this one is so, so good as well. It's about the language that cults use to draw us in, what it is about that language that draws us in, and the super interesting parallels between really scary, intense cults that take over your entire life and small lifestyle things that can feel a bit cult-ish, hence the name. I was so interested in this book. I was really engrossed while I was reading. I love Amanda Montell's writing style. You can feel her passion in every paragraph.
Ooh, I felt like that was like a Hamilton lyric or something right there.
But I just love the way that she gets across really like what can be intense and confusing information in a very straightforward way. I think she's so talented. And with that, those are going to be all of my reading survey questions for 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, liked seeing some of my reading wrap-up stuff from 2024. Thank you so, so much for watching. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another day of Happy Hailey Days. Bye!